Hello, Brobs. We're back with Frank Leslie's Christmas book, 1889 to 1890. Cruising along with several chapters today, which aren't very long, so it's not much of an accomplishment, Rob. Chapter 16, A Revelation. The lady and gentleman staying in the hotel had taken a great fancy to Lise. The lady often remarked that Bonny reminded her strongly of her little boy. Lise became quite curious about their little child, and one day asked the lady again about him. He was lost, the lady replied. It was a dreadful thing. We never knew what became of him. I am so sorry, Lise said timidly, for the poor mother had broken down and was sobbing hysterically. My dear, I like to speak sometimes about my little boy, the lady continued. But how did he get lost? Lise asked. We think he must have been stolen. Oh, how dreadful, Lise exclaimed in horror. It was dreadful, the lady replied. I have often hoped poor Bonny might be dead, safe with God. Poor Bonny. Bonny, Lise echoed. Why, Cousin Johann used always to call himself Bonny when he was little. Was your little boy's name Johnny? No, Robbie. But he called himself Bonny. He always talked very indistinctly, the lady continued, smiling at the remembrance. We never could make out why he talked so badly. Johann used to talk very funny too, Lise said, but he has quite got out of his funny words now. He was a very odd little fellow. I told you how he set the doctor's coat-tails on fire once because he put something in his ear. He disliked doctors and called them all wicked old men. Your Bonny is very much like mine, the lady said incredulously. He disliked our old doctor too. Are you sure? She asked falteringly that this little boy we are speaking about is your uncle's own child? Oh, yes, Lise answered. They only had one. Suddenly, she stopped short. I remember my other aunt in England saying that my Aunt Clara's little boy was dead. And I remember, too, how surprised I was to find a little cousin at Uncle's. How long ago was it this happened? 4 years ago. I remember Uncle came one evening to Aunt Julia's and played to us. A little boy in the house opposite was watching and seemed so disappointed when we pulled the blinds down. He was watching us from a top window. Look at all these nice illustrations for St. Nicholas in France, which is the next story. Lise, I must see your aunt, the lady exclaimed hurriedly. Tell me where you were when you first saw this little cousin of yours. Was it in England? Yes, at St. Mildred's Hill, near London, and Uncle was staying in lodging not very far away. Did this little cousin speak German then? The lady asked. No, Herr Papa always talked English to him. Lise, my dear, run to your auntie and tell her I must see her for a few minutes. Madame Bruder came directly. Bonny's parents were found at last. This lady who had been attracted by the child's face was really his mother. At first, Madame Bruder's kind heart was filled with joy, but the joy was quickly overshadowed. Presently, Mr. Cameron came in, and his wife told him the news she had learned. Madame Bruder had persuaded her husband to see the stranger. She thinks she knows something of Johann, she told him. There was a child lost who bears some points of resemblance, and they are anxious to speak with you about it. I would rather not see this lady, Herr Bruder replied, but if she speaks truly, we must hear her tale. Let her come. So Mrs. Cameron, in company with her husband, followed Madame Bruder to her room. Bonny had his violin in his hands when they entered. Herr Bruder had been playing, and now the child was trying to copy his master's beautiful tone and style. Lise had gone to the piano to accompany Bonny. It was just one of the old, happy music mornings. When the door opened, Bonny looked up quickly. The lady's eyes fell upon him. Bonny, she cried, starting forward, do you know me? For a moment the child stood staring strangely. Then he trembled violently and ran to Mr. Bruder, hiding his face. Send them away, he gasped out. Herr Bruder by degrees made him look up. Bonny's eyes traveled from one face to the other. Some chord of memory was evidently struck. The lady took his hand. Bonny, dear, she said beseechingly, do you not remember your mother, who used to be so ill, and old Mary, your nurse, and all the funny games you used to play up in the nursery? Don't you remember how the old man doctor came and lanced your neck? And the bird that said cuckoo in the dining room? Didn't you stuff bread and butter into its house one day to feed it? Yes, I did. I did give it bread and butter, Bonny began, then suddenly was silent. We found it after you had gone, but Bonny remained silent. My child, Herr Bruder said, do you remember these things? Answer me, little one. Herr Papa, do they want to take me away from you? I won't go. I needn't. Need I? I hope not, my child, I hope not. Say now, do you know this gentleman, Johann? Yes, I don't want him, I want you. This is worst of all, moaned Mrs. Cameron. It is most natural, Mr. Cameron said to his wife. Our child has found with these kind people a home in which he has learned to be happier than he ever was in his own lonely nursery. My wife was always an invalid, he said to Herr Bruder, and this little one was left to himself more than he should have been. I was to blame in that matter. My dear wife, they have given her 4 years of tender care, and we have not yet thanked them. I do thank them, Mrs. Cameron replied. I can never repay your goodness, Mr. Cameron said with emotion. My wife will realize it more keenly when she has got over the strangeness of this meeting. Bonny child, will you come here to me a moment? At Herr Bruder's solemn go, my Johann, Bonny went. Mr. Cameron drew the child close to his chair and put his arm round him. We will never take you away from the father who has been so good to you, my son, but Lise and you must come to visit us when Herr Bruder can spare you. I think he should be left at present, Herr Bruder replied, until at least he has grown used to the thought, for as yet he is unwell. Then Madame Bruder took the children away, while Herr Bruder told Mr. and Mrs. Cameron of Bonny's deafness and the fear that any nervous excitement might bring it back. Bonny's father saw more plainly than before that it would be unwise to remove him suddenly from his present home. They therefore decided to go on to England and prepare for the reception of Herr Bruder and his party, who were to be in London in a few more weeks. And that's the all for. That's the all for, bruv. All right, goodbye. Goodbye.